Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're literally mapping out the future. We're going to cut right through the noise and look at the specific macroeconomic trends, the technologies, and the business sectors that are going to compound and drive global GDP all the way to 2040. So let's follow the capital and see exactly where the world is heading.
Here's our blueprint for today. First, macroeconomic drivers and shifts. Then, AI and compute infrastructure. Third, energy transition and sustainability. Next, next-gen mobility and commerce. And we'll wrap up with the 48 trillion revenue horizon.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Macroeconomic Drivers and Shifts. So, the data is pointing to a massive economic power shift. Over the next decade, global output is going to be overwhelmingly driven by Asia. Just to put this multipolar reality into perspective for a second, China now has 103 companies on the Fortune Global 500, the US, 134. That gap is closing incredibly fast, and it is entirely rewriting global trade routes as we know them.
And as this power shifts, the sheer speed of business is going into absolute overdrive. Back in 1965, a company could expect to sit comfortably on the S&P 500 for about 33 years. But by 2026, that average tenure drops to just 14 years. Basically, a legacy corporation's lifespan at the very top is now roughly the same as a dog's. Half of the S&P 500 will likely be completely replaced over the next decade. You either adapt or you become obsolete.
Moving right along into Section 2, AI and compute infrastructure.
28.5%. That is the projected compound annual growth rate of the AI sector through 2030. I mean, wow. This is no longer just some cool software trick. It's a massive macroeconomic force. It's projected to add $15.7 trillion to the global economy. We're talking about an impact touching everything from deep industrial automation right down to the predictive analytics running your own business.
But here's the catch. You can't scale all this AI software without a massive physical hardware expansion. What we're seeing right now is a high-stakes race to secure global semiconductor supply chains. This explosion of AI requires next-generation chip miniaturization, and that is sparking intense geopolitical competition for the raw materials needed to build them.
In fact, McKinsey estimates that a staggering $6.7 trillion has to be invested in data center infrastructure by 2030. Literally just to keep the lights on for this exponential compute demand. The entire world is racing to build these hyperscale data centers, which are essentially massive, football field-sized brains, just to power the cloud.
Which brings us to Section 3, Energy Transition and Sustainability.
Because, you simply cannot build a $6.7 trillion data network without plugging it into something, right? Recognizing this massive power bottleneck, equity investment in future energy and sustainability tech hit $223.2 billion in 2024 alone. We have to somehow balance our absolutely insatiable new energy demands with strict global climate realities.
So, to get that clean 24/7 power, capital is flooding into compact fission, specifically small modular reactors, or SMRs. Think of these as scalable, plug-and-play nuclear plants. Unlike wind or solar, which obviously rely on the weather, next-gen nuclear offers the continuous, heavy-duty baseload power that tech titans desperately need for those massive compute grids.
And beyond just power, physical resources across the board are getting tighter and wildly more expensive. Because of this, the circular economy is no longer just an environmental buzzword. It's a hard-nosed business survival strategy. When the costs of water, land, and raw materials inevitably spike, companies have to recycle and reuse just to protect their bottom lines from crippling supply chain shocks. Next up, Section 4, Next-Gen Mobility and Commerce.
We were really tracking three core growth arenas here. First, electric vehicles, which are being propelled by huge breakthroughs in solid-state batteries. Second, robo-taxis. Shared autonomous fleets promise to basically gut current transportation costs using advanced AI and HD mapping. And finally, next-generation e-commerce, which is shifting heavily toward ultra-fast, AI-driven supply chains.
But none of these shifts happen in a vacuum. They are entirely dependent on the global rollout of 5G and edge computing. It's this digital infrastructure that allows for instantaneous, frictionless transactions on a planetary scale, forever altering how we, as consumers, behave and actually purchase goods.
And finally, Section 5, the 48 trillion revenue horizon.
You know the old saying, capital follows conviction? Well, in 2024, equity investments actually increased in 10 out of 13 major frontier technology trends. We are seeing massive, layered money pouring into things like AI, bioengineering, and space tech. And these aren't just isolated bets, they reinforce one another, creating massive, compounding market effects.
According to the McKinsey Global Institute, these compounding trends create highly specific, high-growth arenas. We're talking software and AI, cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, semiconductors, SMRs, and advanced batteries. By 2040, these specific sectors alone are projected to generate a staggering $29 to $48 trillion in global revenue. Make no mistake, these are the undisputed engines of future wealth. And there's actually an empirical magic formula driving these hypergrowth arenas. It really requires three things. First, you need a fundamental step change in a technology. Second, layered investments that reinforce each other. And third, a massive addressable market. When those three elements align perfectly, you get secular growth that just wildly outperforms the broader economy. So we've mapped the macro shifts, the infrastructure, the energy demands, and the staggering financial horizon ahead. The data is incredibly clear on exactly where the next 2 decades of growth will live. So I'll leave you with this. As digital complexity and resource demands continue to compound, how exactly will your organization adapt its structural blueprint today to capture its share of that $48 trillion horizon tomorrow?